Hey, what's up, everybody? I wanted to take a minute and welcome you to the Donut Shop podcast. I had a suggestion from somebody who watches the show and thought it was a good idea. I'm always open to suggestions about the show. And he mentioned that I never usually introduce myself or at least tell you about who I am. And with adding new fans or new viewers all the time, it might be a good idea to go over that. So, my name is Justin. I've been a police officer for 20 years. I'm actually getting ready for retirement. I'm going to retire and start doing this podcasting stuff full time. During my career, I've worked on road patrol. I've been a crisis negotiator. Did that for about 8 years. It was great training. Learned a lot about mental health and working with people. I was a school resource officer. I worked in the elementary school and then in the high school. I did that for 6.5 years. Then I also moved into the community resource unit and public information officer unit. So I did a lot of community engagement. I ran our social media for the department. And then I also spoke with the news. Kind of leads into this, even though I was a podcaster before I was in that unit. I've been doing podcasting since about 2012. I started with a soccer podcast with some friends for a local soccer team. We had a great time. It was a little different than this, obviously, but I was on the mic and doing that kind of stuff. Then eventually in 2020, started this podcast with a friend of mine, Nick, and he's no longer on the show, but the show drives on, and here we go. Basically, it's a cop sitting in a donut shop and someone interesting walks in. They don't always have to be law enforcement based. As a law enforcement officer, we know when we're in uniform, pretty much everybody comes up and talks to us. Especially when we're trying to take a break and eat dinner or eat a lunch or something like that. It's not usually a bother, and sometimes you get interesting stories out of it. So that's kind of where I created the premise for this podcast and what it is today. Now let's get into the episode.
Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Donut Shop podcast. And today I'm with Josh and Wayne. I met them back in January. Oddly enough, I've been on their podcast, which is called Suck It Up Man Podcast. But I met them in January on the 17th. We were doing a 5K down in Miami, and I'm looking around, and I'm used to the comic convention circuit, going to Comic Cons and seeing people dressed in in costume. But this is a 5K, so I'm expecting tank tops, runner shorts, all that kind of stuff. And I look over, and there's these two dudes walking around like Dumb and Dumber, and have the tuxedos on, the blue or the powder blue with the orange tuxedos, top hats, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, I'm going to take a picture with these guys and say what's up. So I went over and said what's up, asked if I could take a picture. We did, and then they're immediately like, follow our podcast. Here's some information, and I'm like, this is a shtick, like this is a thing, and you guys are advertising for a podcast wearing this to a 5K. Like, this is freaking crazy. But also, by the way, I have a podcast and you guys should follow me too. And so we did the old 2025 2026 as if we're a bunch of nerds exchanging Instagram information and sharing that kind of stuff, follow for a follow. And obviously they're cool. I saw them on the trail running the 5K because you couldn't miss them, of course. And then we've communicated, of course. And like I said, I've been on their podcast, which is over on YouTube, Suck It Up Man Podcast. We did a live show that's already out. You can go check that out. And then we reciprocated. I'm having them over on mine just to talk about what they do, what their podcast is about, and who they are. So that was a long-winded introduction, but pretty easy because it's from memory, and I didn't even necessarily need to read anything. So it was all made up. What's up, guys? Wayne and Josh. We'll kind of banter back and forth and let you guys talk whenever you want. So what's up? How's the podcast going?
It's going well. So we had mentioned it on our episode we had you on, but a couple months ago we had somebody on, a younger guy, like I think in his 20s, and we had mentioned how Gen Z is not drinking alcohol nearly as much as every other generation. So because of that, these event organizers, they're trying to figure out ways to get younger people especially to actually come out and be social, right? So
Yeah.
we are in Florida pretty much every January for poker, playing at the Hard Rock up in Hollywood. And I had mentioned to Josh, like, hey, I saw an ad for Diplo's Run Club, Diplo's
Yeah.
5K plus a rave afterwards. And I said, hey, this is a perfect opportunity for us to go out and kind of practice what we preach. So we already had the Dumb and Dumber suits. We of course, brought them with us, try to get our money's worth for it. And yeah, ended up meeting you, as you mentioned, and it was just a really, really cool event. That's one of the things we cover on our podcast is mental health. And 5Ks certainly do that. And we also talk
Yeah.
about relationships, AI, a little bit of everything. So just trying to cover more real world issues, because Josh and I are both poker vloggers. So a lot of people kind of know us from that. But
Yeah.
last year, we branched into more of a larger niche in mental health, relationships, AI, just some more real world issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's cool because and you guys, like you said, that's the other another side of the introduction is that you guys are professional poker players. Like that is a full-time job. That's your real job. So like Josh, like where do you guys like how do you guys run that? How does
Well, I
one
had I
become a
had two
poker player?
epiphanies this past
Yeah.
week, and one of them was my mother-in-law and my wife both had free rooms at a local casino, so we were like, okay, we'll go there. And I remember my wife was like, "Oh yeah, I remember the last time I won, on the slot machine, and I won like, $900 or $1,000 on this unicorn slot machine." And it dawned on me from being a professional poker player that like most of my play comes online, that I'll be sitting on the couch playing for like 1,000 or $2 or $3,000 pot, sometimes four. Usually the 4 and 5 1 usually make my heart go pitter patter, but like
Yeah.
if it's like a one or a $2,000 pot, I don't even like get excited about it. Whether I win or lose, I'm just kind of like, eh. So I had this epiphany this week because my wife was acting all excited about, gambling on slot machines and possibly winning like, a hand pay or winning $1,000. And I looked at her and I said, I remember when I used to get really excited about either winning or losing $1,000. I said, now it just doesn't even like phase me. So like the harder, the longer you do poker for a living, the more hardened you get on like just getting excited over things that most people would get excited about. So that
Yeah.
was one of my epiphanies was, holy shit, I don't, my heart doesn't go pitter patter unless it's for a big pot.
Yeah.
If it's for $5,000 or more, I get excited. If it's like $1,000 or $2,000 pot, I don't get that excited. So that was like a weird epiphany that I had, just from being a long-term poker player. It was just that was bizarro. And then the other epiphany that I had, and this came like last night. Like last night, I've said this before to viewers and listeners, is that when you're a pro poker player, you don't get to determine your hours. Like you kind of do. I mean, you get to get up and if you go to the casino and you play whenever you want to play, but sometimes like last night, the game was just so good online that I'm like not falling asleep, but I'm like, oh my God, I can't go to sleep. And you don't go to bed until 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning because the game is so good. That's been the last 2 nights for me. I came home expecting to go to bed by midnight, and then next thing you know, I'm up until 4 or 5 in the morning, both mornings, because the game is just that good. And so the epiphanies are, even though it might seem like a glorious or luxurious lifestyle, our lifestyle is just different. you know.
Like I mean, I don't know. Like generally, the layman's would call a professional gambler a degenerate. Would you
Sure.
call that a degenerate type lifestyle? At
I
least
mean,
from someone on my side who doesn't gamble very often,
yeah, no,
uh,
we call people degens all the time, and we say we are just a bunch of degens because,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, there comes a time where if you're like playing poker and the table is just so juicy that next thing you wanted to leave at 6 o'clock at night, and next thing you know, it's like noon, you know. I mean, like legit, you're like, holy shit, what happened to the last 18 hours? Like it just went, you know. But I mean,
Well,
if
loved ones
you're
have obviously got to be very forgiving in those situations.
well,
Where,
absolutely, and this is where a lot of experience comes into play. So like, my first wife didn't understand that the game is, if it's good, you're gonna stay there. If the game sucks, you're
yeah,
gonna get up. My current wife, who I say is like my unicorn, she doesn't care. She's like, if I go to a poker game, like I went to a home poker game last night, which was a little bit of a drive for me. And when she called me at like 10 o'clock at night, she was like, "Oh, wow, you're only, an hour and a half, 2 hours from home." I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I thought you'd be there all night, you know?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "So did I, but the game just broke early." So, yeah, it's, I don't know. It's one of those things that it's just a different lifestyle, you know? Um,
but you've got to, you've got to that point, you've got to find the right partner that's gonna, the right spouse, the right boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, anybody that is gonna understand what you
oh,
do and have some grace in that
yeah, if your
situation.
partner doesn't understand that you're a poker player first, your relationship is going to be a lot of arguing, you know. And
Yeah,
my current wife, I said to her, there's going to be days when I come home and I win 10K, and there's going to be days when I come home and I lose 10K, and you just need to be like, huh, you need to be just like past the salt, whether it's I win 10K or lose 10K, you know. And I
yeah,
think a lot of people, her mother-in-law, or my mother-in-law, for example, said, when I said, "Oh, I ended up winning a tournament or whatever, and it was, a couple $1,000s," her mom was like, "Whoa, your wife's rich." And it's like, no, it just goes into the bankroll. Like,
yeah,
there's things, yeah, we can go buy a steak if we want instead of hamburger, but that's, really the only difference.
yeah. Wow, wow, wow. That's so so Josh, where did you get kind of like, where were you in life that you were just like, all right, this is now
Ooh,
time, you know? I know
yes.
I've heard Wayne explain it to me on your show, and I'll get to him and let him explain his side, but Josh, you like, when did you sort of
Like, when did I
decide that,
say I need to be a professional poker player instead of
yep,
whatever it is else I'm
yeah,
doing?
I'm gonna get rid of this 40-hour week thing or 30-hour week
It
thing that I'm
it was
doing
a
over here?
huge it was a huge argument with the first wife, because at the time I was making like 60,000 a year salary plus commission plus bonuses. So my net pay was probably around 100 grand, and this was like in 2003, 2004,
Yeah,
2005. So I mean, 100 grand back then was really good money. I mean, it's
good
still
money,
really
yeah.
good money. Yeah, even now.
Mhm.
And I remember coming home and just getting into a hellacious argument with my first wife about becoming a pro poker player. And she was like, "Well, you have a kid, you can't do that. They need security. There's no security with being a poker player." And I'll admit, I mean, it's one of the things that I probably forced it more than what most people like. I think most people, when they think about becoming a poker player, they don't they don't have the advice of like a wise old poker player telling them, "Hey, your relationships are going to be for shit for at least 5 years. Your family's not going to understand what you do." Like, I got a degree from the University of Notre Dame, one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, and people would ask me all the time, "Why the hell do you play cards?" And it's like, because I
Yeah.
enjoy it. I enjoy it. Doing all the other stuff for corporate, I did not enjoy worth the shit. Teaching people how to play cards or playing cards is something that I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah.
Um, Otherwise,
And
I wouldn't be doing it.
yeah, and to that mental health side, as you guys talk about on your show, the mental health side of it is you got to do what makes you happy, and if you're drumming along all day, or all every year in the rat race doing something you don't like, I mean, what's the purpose? Like,
Well, yeah,
what are you getting out of that?
and there's things that like poker teaches you that you don't expect. Like, one of the things I have as a personality trait or as a character trait, people will tell me all the time, is they say, "Holy shit, Josh, you handle yourself extremely well in moments of crisis." Like, whether it's the boat's not motors not working and we're hitting 6 foot rolling waves and we got to call the Coast Guard because we might sink, or whatever the case may be. People tell me all the time, they're like, you are absolutely one of the most calmest people in times of absolute chaos and crisis. So, I mean, the nice thing is because when you're in the middle of a poker hand, you could be involved in chaos and crisis and you can't do anything about it except find your way out. Sometimes it's, folding or going all in or whatever, but you have to evaluate each individual situation and then just move forward. So I'd say poker teaches that probably better than anything else, that and stubbornness.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could go to my field with the law enforcement side of it. You've got crisis and stuff, and there's practice, there's scenarios that we go through, just like you guys practice and go through scenarios. There's 3-4 different ways to play a hand probably. But it just depends on how you do it. And the same thing goes towards law enforcement with dealing with crisis. And ultimately I was having a conversation with somebody earlier. With my thing is I always knew that the law was what could back me up. As long as I was dealing within the law and I had the law, then it's all right. Somebody goes to jail, crisis somewhat solved, at least for the time being,
Right.
this person's in jail, and so I always worked on those somewhat absolutes, but there was always 5-6 different routes that you could take, and I could probably relate that to poker, where towards the beginning of the game you're looking at numbers, you're looking at odds, possibilities, hands, cards that are visible, cards that are on the table, all that kind of stuff, and you guys deal with all those scenarios same way as I'm getting a hand dealt to me on the radio and knowing a few things that I might know about the area, the house, the history of the house, if it's in the computer, and those kind of things. And then my brain goes to 7 different scenarios, and I've got 7 different
Right.
scenarios. And as I hit each benchmark in real life, I'm deciding which scenario is how I go, which I guess you guys could probably relate to in poker. You see a card come down and it's like, all right, 5 of those scenarios are wiped off the table because that ain't going to happen. Or this is what I've seen in the person's, mannerisms and in their tells and that
Sure.
kind of stuff. So interesting stuff on how those could relate too. I believe, if you guys agree. Wayne, I know you said it on your show, but that was for your audience. So what about for me here? Like, where did you decide on what you were doing?
So I believe I was 14. I was working at McDonald's. I think at that point it was probably the youngest that you can really get a real job, and I was making 5.15 an hour.
Hell
And
yeah.
online poker was becoming a really big thing. This was probably, let's see, 2002 maybe. But I didn't have a credit card, of course. I'm 14, but I convinced my dad to let me put $50 onto a poker site, and I did. And within the first week, I ran it up to $1,000. And I had a shift the next day, and I called my boss and I said, "Listen, Rob, I'm not gonna be able to make it into work tomorrow." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And maybe looking back, it was kind of a dick move. You're supposed to give your 2 weeks, and if you're scheduled the next day, you're probably supposed to go in. But
What do you want from a 14, 15-year-old, like
yeah. I mean, 5.15 an
priorities aren't
hour.
formed yet in the brain.
No, no,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's really when I started playing poker a lot. That was probably a 2-3 year period. I played pretty much nonstop, and then
Wow.
there was a ban on poker. Where everything pretty much got shut down, but I always knew that I wanted to eventually become a poker player. I even still have a time capsule that I did from a marketing class in, I believe it was a freshman or sophomore year, where I said I eventually want to be a pro poker player living in Vegas or LA or somewhere on the West Coast. I live in San Diego, so kind of close, a couple hours from
Yeah.
LA. So I always knew I wanted to get, to be a poker player, but it's not really the easiest thing to do, as obviously
There's not
most
like an
jobs.
application process, I'm sure.
There's not,
Yeah.
no. And most jobs, okay, I'm going to make $25 an hour. I work my 40 hours a week. I'm going to come home with X amount. Obviously with poker, you can do all the right things, and a lot of times you're going to lose money, right? And then
Yeah.
Josh mentioned his first wife and now his current wife, right? Like that's not easy to deal with, especially when you're in a relationship. All right, honey, I need some money for bills. Oh, sorry, babe, I had a tough week at the tables. Oh, yeah, how'd you do?
Yeah.
Only like $300-400? No, I actually lost $4,000.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's great, honey. And training, because as Josh
Those
was
are great
mentioning,
scenarios to have where the woman's like, "What do you mean you lost money? You're not supposed to lose." Oh
yeah,
yeah, you're
This
right. I
this
wasn't
is your
supposed to
this
lose.
is your job. Like you're
yeah,
not
like
supposed to
Yeah.
be bad at it.
like what kind of job is this? So as Josh mentioned earlier, the money but kind of becomes relative. You almost become numb to it. It's essentially like a tool to gather more money, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you get good at that as a poker player, but obviously people who don't play poker, right? Like to us, maybe a $500 $1,000 pot, that's nothing, but to someone that works a regular job making $20-25 an hour, like that rate basically represents their entire week's salary in a lot of cases, right? So
Yeah.
you get really good at that as a poker player, but if you're in a relationship, being able to they're probably never going to get to the same point you are, but like kind
Never.
of bridging the gap a little bit and saying like, listen, babe, I understand like I lost money, but you have to look at it as like one long poker session. Like, yeah, I might have lost this past week, but hey, I won 2 weeks ago, I won 3 weeks ago. You got to kind of look at the average where you're not going to have just like a consistent income as you would if you're working pretty much 95% of jobs.
Do you find that you like not to get into your personal finances, but like do you find that you have to kind of compartmentalize that stuff? Like, all right, breaking this off, real life, break,
Hmm.
this stays in this fund for work, kind of thing. Like you gotta, especially if you have responsibilities. It's one thing if
I
you're
think
a single dude and you have no responsibilities, but if you've got some responsibilities and it's like shit, rent's due, or
Hmm.
Yeah, I
mortgages, the
think a lot
payments
of
due.
poker players, I mean, they have a hard time managing an effective bankroll. Usually what happens is like if a poker player goes on a hot streak and then next thing you know they're up, it could be 15,000 for the month, it could be 50,000 for the month, or it could be like 50 grand for 2 months or 15 grand for 2 months, depending on the person. But if they go on that hot streak, instead of reserving some of that money for when they go on the cold streak, usually they'll go buy something extravagant. Or they'll take like a really long vacation and then they're like, oh, I got to get back to the grind. I had 50 grand 2 weeks ago and now I'm down to 10. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're going to have a time when, you are going to lose. You have to factor those times in. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're right. I think when you're first starting off in poker, it's a lot more relative because yeah, you're right. Like rent is due, mortgage is due, everything else. Once you've been doing it for a certain period of time, the money is still relative, but other things are going to help take care of things. Like I have other investments like with Airbnb and rental properties and things like that.
Okay.
So it's like if I have a shitty poker month, like December, I lost almost $12,000 last year in the month of December, just a couple months ago. It was my
Yeah.
worst month of the whole year. The only other month I lost was like June, and I think it was like 2,500. Every other month was profitable, but when you have those months where you lose $10,000 or $15,000, you just have to have enough of a swing of a bankroll to where you're not completely going broke and finding a 9 to 5. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going
Yeah.
to say, just to add to that, I think it's really important that, and I recommend this to students and anyone I talk to, that you want to keep your poker bankroll and your life roll separate, right? So, like your
Right.
life roll obviously covers your rent, groceries, whatever else. You want to keep that completely separate from your bankroll because you don't, there's a saying in poker, scared money don't make money, right? So you don't really, or you don't want to play with your rent money, right? So you want to keep that completely separate. Sometimes, as Josh alluded to, that's something that a lot of poker players aren't really good at, right? And then they get into a very desperate situation where they blow all their money. And then the hardest, really, they say the difference between a poker player and a retired poker player is just your bankroll. Is you basically won a bunch of money, but you didn't do a good job of keeping a kind of a rainy day fund for when you go on a cold streak or you're running bad or whatnot. And then you go broke. And then a lot of times you have to get back into the real world and get a real job, which is not easy, right? If you're used to making $2,000-3,000 a week, there aren't a lot of jobs that you can just like walk into making that, especially if on your resume there's a huge gap. Like,
Yeah.
oh, hey Wayne, what were you doing these last 5 years? Your last job was in like 2019 or something, So
I took a
that's
sabbatical.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that
Right.
doesn't look good to an employer. So
Yeah.
having good bankroll management is really one of the hardest things. It's really one of the biggest Achilles heels in poker.
Well, and keep
It-
in mind, a lot of poker players will go back and forth in between getting a real job and being a poker player as they learn throughout their career, So it's common where, like, if somebody's in their first couple of years, you're like, I tell this to everybody that you're going to go broke at least once, if not multiple times. But when you go broke, usually it's different in the first 5 or 6 years of your career as a poker player. You're probably going to go broke more than any other time. You might go broke, in years 10 or 11 or 12. But like usually once you get the hang of things and you figure all that shit out, after about 15 years or so, you're not going broke anymore. Everything starts to click in and make sense. And you're like, why? I don't need to screw around and try to have too much fun when I'm playing poker. I just need to focus and make the money. And you can still have fun with people on the table. That's part of it. But don't ever, if you're sitting at a poker table with me and I've given you the delusion that I'm there strictly for fun, you've already lost.
Yeah. Josh is obviously too comfortable with taking your money at this point, and so and you're obviously leaking like a sieve, and just letting it all fall on the table. So
Yeah.
all right, cool. Let's take I'm going to run a quick ad, and then I kind of want to talk to you sort of what you mentioned before. You started to mention out about like maybe the burnout or the the phase or the cost of the career of being a professional poker player. So we'll be right back. Yo, what's up, guys? I want to do a follow-up. I used to run an ad or commercial for my friends at HPTRT, Human Performance, talking about like testosterone therapy or, all that kind of stuff. I finally I've been using it. I've been, a member of the program for over 6 months now. I got my second round of labs, and I'm going to be upfront and honest with you. When I first was tested, I was at 330. I'm a 43-year-old man, and my test was at 330. I didn't even go through the injections. I'm going through a couple different types of prescription pills that they have to help me out, all legal, all on the up and up. But after this 6 months, my test has gone up to 910. As somebody who works out 3 to 4 times a week, wants to stay young, wants to stay healthy with all this stuff. It's helped with all kinds of stuff, like my focus, continuing to get me like the best sleep that I've ever gotten. I've enjoyed it. So go over to hp-trt.com and check it out. You can bring, if you've had lab work within the last 6 months, you can bring your own lab work and they'll start you up. If you haven't, then you pay for the lab work through them. Or you can just go to your own doctor and do your lab work through your normal insurance, which I'm sure has a zero copay, if anything. And use the code DSP20, and that'll get you 20% off forever, as long as you're a member, as long as you use Human Performance. So it's a great program, good people over there. So go ahead and get it done. And if you've been thinking about it, or if you've looked at recent tests in your testosterone and you want a boost of that kind of stuff, get into it, because you can also get the testosterone through them as well as peptides and other things. So DSP20 will get you 20% off. Good luck. What's in the cup? Guys, what's in my cup? Blackout Coffee Company. We joined up with them. I've been drinking it and I enjoy it, and I think you may enjoy it as well. So you can go over to our website and click the link, or you can just go to their website, blackoutcoffee.com, and use our coupon code to get 10% off. The code is DSP10. So go over, check it out. That reminds me, I gotta finish my checkout. I was in the website earlier today to buy my 5 pound bag of coffee because I work now in my professional podcaster life. Being retired, I'm not drinking coffee out of the house. I'm drinking freaking coffee at the house. So I'm burning through that 5 pound bag a lot faster than I used to burn through it when I was going to work 4 days a week, and out of the house. So so like you kind of talked or you kind of mentioned it, like in your first couple years, you're going to go broke. Some guys end up flipping back to a real world scenario where you're punching a time card. Maybe if that's out of panic or just out of sheer necessity. What like how would you say the mental ups and downs of being a professional poker player sort of, go throughout your time doing it? We'll go with
I
Josh
would,
first.
yeah, I would say that poker teaches you probably the highest of highs and the lowest of lows.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine, not that I've ever done cocaine before, because I haven't, but I've had friends of mine who have done cocaine, and they say
The
cocaine
tie
is the
dye really
highest.
makes me doubt you, but I'll believe
I,
everything you say.
trust me, when I walk on the Vegas Strip and I have a tie dye hat, I get asked from one end of the strip to the
I'm
other at
sure.
least 3 to 5 times if I have any of that stuff, and it's
Yeah,
always
they
no. It's something I don't do. If it comes to like weed or shrooms, that's something totally different. But coke,
yeah,
no, thank you.
yeah,
But
especially
yeah,
today.
a friend of mine said that cocaine is like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and that's very similar to poker. Poker, you definitely have the highest of highs. Like when you play a poker tournament for a couple of days or a day or whatever the case may be, you just play any poker tournament, you end up winning it. You absolutely feel like everybody should be worshiping you. You're like, oh my God, I'm the greatest in the world. This is amazing. I just won this huge tournament because it's I guess in a way it's like running a marathon where it's like something you've tried to accomplish for a while and you finally got there and then you were the first one to get there. But it also is the lowest of lows because it is a percentage game, and that 67% chance can be, the 33% chance where you lose can happen over and over and over and over and over and over again. If you go on a bell curve, well, eventually you're going to be on one of the outliers on a bell curve. So when
Yeah,
you're on the one outlier where everything's going great, the world is amazing. But when you're on the other outlier, everything sucks. And it can really eat you up mentally because it it you start questioning everything you do. And one of the things I teach my students is I say if you're not questioning being a professional poker player at least once a month, you're not doing it appropriately enough. And I've been a pro poker player now like 18, 19 years. And every month I get to some point in the month where I'm like, should I be doing this for a living? And I enjoy it and I love it. But, again, it's one of those things where it's like some nights when you're like, oh my God, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired as balls.
yeah,
Like I just want to go to bed.
yeah,
But other nights you're like, I keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I keep getting my teeth kicked in. This is not fun. This is not enjoyable. This is a grind. And then, especially when you have all those bills and responsibilities, a wife and a kid and stuff like that, yeah, then it can be very tasking on your mental health because then you're like, oh, it's not just me that I'm failing. I'm failing, my family. So,
right.
yeah,
So
it's a
you've got to
grind.
take like a life assessment every month. Check in with yourself. Check in with all things about your life.
Oh, yeah.
Almost a smart idea.
I try to at least once a month remember, like, when I hate poker, because that happens once a month, why I love poker. Like, I go, I love poker because I went to Bali last year. I went to Tokyo last year. I love poker because I'm going to Iceland in August. I
Hey,
love poker because I can be in Florida in January. So anytime I hate poker, I have to go back and say, why do I love poker? There's other reasons too. Of course, you meet people you would never normally meet. Like that's how Wayne and I met, and
yeah,
not only that, but everybody who plays poker, it doesn't matter what your social status is or your celebrity status. If you want to play poker, you have to get on the poker table. So you know, it's funny when you meet A-rated celebrities. Like last year, I can't remember if you were next to him as well, Wayne, but one of the most famous soccer people in the world. And I had no idea who the hell he was. And all the European guys were like taking photos at the table, and they're like, "Do you know who that is?" I'm like, "No, he's a soccer player." I'm like, "Great." I'm like,
Do you know who
"We're
it was?
playing
Or
poker."
you
I
remember who it
can't.
was, Wayne?
No, I
Um,
can't remember who it was, but I
I'm
know.
I'm trying to remember. I can't, the name is escaping me at the moment.
Is it Spanish guy or
I want to
French guy?
say he's Mexican. Maybe he plays for the Mexico national team. Maybe
Yeah.
Brazil. Um,
It wasn't
I'll
Ronaldinho, but it was somebody else that was like super famous. I remember because like they were like, "Oh my god, that's one of the most famous soccer players in the world."
yeah. It wasn't Messi. It wasn't Ronaldo.
Well, so there's the one. I mean, there's been several Ronaldos. There's a Brazilian
Oh,
Ronaldo. The current Ronaldo is that most people would know is from Portugal. He
Yeah.
plays in Saudi Arabia right now. Skinny, very fit guy.
Hmm.
And then there's a bit of a chunky, like has been referred to lately as Fat Ronaldo. But he's one of the best soccer players ever. So
whichever
and he's
one
a
is bald.
Brazilian.
I remember this guy was like shaved bald,
I think
but
he's bald.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Ronaldo. Hang on, I'll pull a picture. Let me.
and fat Ronaldo kind of that sounds like somebody who would
I'll try
probably
and
play
find it.
poker. No, if he's a
I
little
got
on
to
the
try and
chunky
find a
side,
picture. Oh, so now I'm getting all kinds of. I'm getting all kinds of poker players as
that are also
um
soccer players.
yeah, that are also soccer players. But let me pull this. I'm going to pull this picture and I'm going to put it up. But but yeah,
Oh,
here's another
Neymar.
one.
Was it Neymar? I know he was at one of
Oh,
the
Neymar.
events.
Yeah,
Neymar was at
Neymar
one of the
sounds really
events.
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it was him. Yeah, because he tends to play poker from time to time. So I think he was at maybe the Venetian one time we were there, and yeah,
No,
there
he
was
was in the
just
bracelet event too last year
okay.
at the series. Yeah, I think he
Yep.
was either in
Oh
the
crap.
PLO or the double board, but I remember people were like, "Oh my God, you're sitting right next to," and I was just like, "Yeah, that's great." I'm like,
Oh,
but I mean, we get that from time to
here's
time, you know.
why isn't it letting me?
Yeah, it was
Oh, it
definitely
says there's an
definitely
issue with my file. So
definitely
yeah, we'll
Neymar.
say maybe it was Neymar.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it was.
that's cool. He has like a spaghetti string for a knee these days, but so
Oh
poker would
yeah.
probably be a better poker would probably be a smarter thing for him. But yeah, it's not letting me. It doesn't like the file. I just like ripped it off of Google. But yeah, so maybe it was Neymar. So but that's cool. And those guys, they probably play a lot of house stuff and a lot of stuff within the teams. I know you've got like basketball players always talking about playing poker on the flights, like because they've got charter type jets that have tables. So those guys will get
Hmm.
together. And I know I've known some professional soccer players, and those guys definitely have talked about playing games on road trips and stuff to pass your time, so and take each other's money. So and they can play probably some higher stakes stuff. The soccer players I knew probably couldn't play much high stakes, but they could play something. So yeah, so that's interesting. So all right, so Wayne, you've basically done this for your whole adult and part of your teenage life.
Well, there was a period in between where so after online got shut down for a while, like I always knew I wanted to be a poker player, but online wasn't really an option for me. And then it took me a very long time to get back to it. So I worked a number of jobs.
Yeah.
I worked in sales in New York, and then I moved to Ohio. I lived in Kentucky for a little bit. I was in retail for a while, and then I've been in California for the last 8 years. So I've been a pro poker player since 2021, so about 5 years now.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's when I started the poker vlog. And as Josh mentioned earlier, we met through poker. So it was the 2022 WSOP World Series of Poker, which for those of you who don't know, it's the largest poker tournament of the year. It's held
Yeah.
annually in Vegas. Usually starts the end of May and it ends the middle of July. So it's about a little bit over a month and a half period where you have people from all over the world that come out there to compete in different tournaments, win bracelets. That's kind of the equivalent to like a Super Bowl trophy in poker.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was playing at a cash game, and I had probably had a vlog out for a little bit over a year at this point. And then someone across the table goes, "Hey, are you Donkfish?" Because my YouTube is Donkfish Poker. And I said, "Yes, that's me." And he was, we ended up chatting for a little bit. And he had, I think, created the channel name at this point, but I don't know if he actually released anything at this point. But we ended up just chatting, and there wasn't a lot of people really in the poker or in the PLO space. So poker is a very small niche as it is. And then the most common game, as a lot of yourself and viewers might know, is No Limit Hold'em. But
Yeah.
we don't typically play much of that. We play the second most popular game, which is PLO, or Pot Limit Omaha. So not really many people in the space. So it just made sense for us to work together and travel around. And we've been doing that for about 3-4 years now. So.
And I think that's what Josh said when we were on your show, that he had kind of like, he heard your voice and was like, "Oh, I know that voice. Like, I know the voice
Mhm.
of this guy." You didn't necessarily know your face as well, but the voice, and then picked it up and was like, "This guy, yeah, I know you, dude." So yeah, that's man, it's pretty cool. It seems foreign to me because I've had the generic, white bread American story. You go to college, you graduate from college, and you start a career, and you work a career, and then it just so happens that career is law enforcement. So another,
Mhm.
great American, normal story. So that's one of the fun things about doing, podcasts and meeting different people and networking and stuff, is that, we can have kind of extended conversations about, different stuff and stuff that people have lived through and that they're doing, that are completely foreign to some subset of people out there on the internet. So
Mhm.
you find, so like, what is a poker vlog, or what are you guys doing? Because I would think that like being at a poker table and having cameras would be, other than World Series of Poker, or World Poker Tour and stuff like that, like sanctioned camera events. Can you guys like do a tournament and actually like sit there and talk and vlog?
It depends on what tournament it is. So if you're in the Midwest is still backwards on a lot of their rules unless you're at a charity group. The answer is generally no. If you're in the South, like if you're in Florida and you have permission from the establishment, or you're at like one of the former dog kennel clubs, then they're okay with it. Texas, you're okay with it. West Coast, you're okay with it. The Northeast, not okay with it whatsoever. Like the East Coast and the Northeast is just behind in times. And I can understand, like, when we were starting off blogging like 3-4 years ago, people might be like, "Oh, that's a little awkward." But now it's like there's literally 100 different vloggers on poker, just on poker, at least 100 different vloggers. But like Wayne said, 96 of them or 97 of them do No Limit Texas Hold'em. There's
Oh,
only a
okay.
couple that do PLO, and even the one vlogger that did a little bit of PLO, not with us but alongside us, is he just announced today he's not doing any more vlogging on PLO, long form content, because it is a niche. Like you run into a smaller subsection of what is already a small area, but I think the viewers love it even more because they're way more loyal. They follow your story a little bit more. Like I do on my vlog, I do a couple different things. I do life of a grinder. So if any of the listeners or viewers out there want to see the life of a poker player is like for the last 4 years, I just put out episode 40, where it's literally me discussing my week, me discussing what's going on in my life, whether it's, oh, I'm getting prepped to go to the series, or something just happened, or whatever the case may be. Anything that it doesn't involve with too much like direct poker content. It does some poker stories, some life lessons that are really important, and some of them are absolutely downright hilarious. So on my vlog, I do that where it's life of a grinder, but then I also do the cash games where I'm recording right at the table. But I think Wayne and I are at a point when we sit down at a table, a couple people recognize us right away, and they already like they'll ask us when we sit down. They're like, "Is this going on the vlog?" Because that means they've seen it. But I don't think I've sat down at a table, at least in 9 months, where at least one or two people didn't recognize me.
I mean,
Even on,
yeah, I
yeah.
guess you can't complain with that a little bit. But so like what uh, so like all right, so when I think of vlogs, I'm thinking Casey Neistat on YouTube,
Hmm.
skating around New York, telling a story, at least lately. Before, it was when he was doing daily vlogs, it was, your day. So you're sitting at the table, and are you setting up a camera like over your shoulder at the table? Like
No, we usually
where's
set
that
them
going?
like where if the chips are right here, we just set them right next to the chip or on the railing. So it's pretty inconspicuous. Like the only time I think people notice that I'm recording, and I'm changing how I record because now I'm working with an AI agent, which is a little bit different. But what I would do is at the end of the hand is I would just pick up my phone and then zoom into the board where the flop, the
Yeah.
turn, and the river was. Now, because of the AI can't recognize the cards, I just talk into my phone after the hand is over. So after the hand is over, I'll go flop was jack of diamonds, 10 of clubs, 8 of spades, turn is this, river is this. And then I'll just
So and then
unrecord.
are you editing that together and kind of creating a story about the tournament, or you just talk
Yeah,
about it after the fact?
whether it's a cash game or a tournament. So usually, like I did a vlog recently of going to a person's home game, like just having going to somebody's house game, and I was like, "Oh, I'm driving to the house game. These are some of my expectations. This is what I'm shooting for. I'm bringing X amount of dollars." Show up, show some of the hands, and then at the end, we're like, "Hey, today we're in for $2,000. We're out for 2,300. We made a $300 profit."
Okay,
So
so
we
and that's
we
kind of
do
the
that. Yeah.
breakdown.
Yeah, that's
The same
that's
sort of thing with
essentially.
yours? Same sort of thing with you, Wayne?
Yeah, so mine are pretty much mostly cash game vlogs. So just to give your viewers an idea of the difference. So a cash game is you go to any local casino and you can buy in for X amount, let's say $100, and you can play for literally as little or as long as you want. Right? You can literally win $100 the first hand and say, "All right, guys, I got dinner for my wife and I. See you later. You can leave." Now a
This was
tournament.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was fun. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. A tournament, a little different, where you're going to pay a set buy-in. Let's use $100 to make it easy, and then you get an amount of chips. And then the goal of the tournament is to get all of the chips, right? So typically,
Yeah.
if you play a tournament, let's say $100 buy-in, 100 people, right? They typically are going to pay 15% of the field. So if you make top 15, you will get a certain amount of money, with obviously first getting the majority of the money. So cash games are more common. Pretty much every local casino, as long as it has a poker room, is going to have some kind of cash games. Typically, it's going to
Yeah.
be a 1-2 no limit hold'em, where maybe it's a $50, $100 buy-in minimum to $300, $400, $500, depending on what it is. That's the majority of what Josh and I play is cash games, but we also do play tournaments, which the World Series of Poker, as we mentioned earlier, that's the most popular one. So we're going to be going back as we have for the last 3-4 years. This June starts the end of May. We usually get there right at that point. And tournaments that's kind of what people used to see on ESPN,
Hell
and
yeah. I used to
they don't
watch the
really
hell out of that. Yeah.
yeah, they don't really show it on ESPN anymore. It's now licensed with Poker Go, who they do have a paid subscription service, but they will give you a bunch of free content on YouTube. So
Oh, okay.
both are fun. There's pros and cons of both cash games and tournaments. Tournaments, as Josh mentioned earlier, he mentioned the highest of highs and the lowest of lows for poker in general, but that really applies to tournaments because you're not going to win many tournaments. Usually, if you're like a really good poker player, you might win, or you might cash, I should say, 15 to 20% of the time. But in a cash game, if you know what you're doing and you kind of have a feel for the players, you can win between like 50, 60, 70% of your sessions. So cash
Yeah.
games are kind of like your bread and butter. That's a little bit more consistent. Where if you want to go for kind of the big swings, then that's where tournaments would come into play.
Yeah, and I'm I told you guys on your show, like I've never sat down at the Hard Rock at a table and played. That's a stressful thing to me, or at least a new experience for me. My thing is home games, and another
Mhm.
style, like where Josh was talking about heading to home games and doing vlogs for that. And that's where we get together with guys from the squad, or usually guys from the police department, and we play at a house, and it's just fun. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely walk out of there, down $300-400, or you can walk out of there. I've walked out up $500-600, because if you've got 10-12 guys that are all there with $500 a piece, basically, like ready to play, like you could
Hmm.
you could make a run and take everybody's money, or you could go out of there. You could be sitting over the other side of the pool deck, just drinking beers with a couple of the other losers, while everybody continues to rebuy and play for the rest of the night. And you guys just get the bullshit in between games, or, because they're almost like mini tournaments. We'll play like
Hmm.
mini tournaments, basically. And then that's it, and then you finish up and maybe reset, and then, all right, deal out everybody fresh, get fresh chips on everybody. And, I'm sitting here folding up my money and putting it back in the pocket and going, all right, this is what I came here with, and I've got chips in front of me, which is still great.
Yep.
So those are fun home games. When you mentioned at one point prep for the World Series of Poker, what how do you prep? Like, what do
What?
you guys obviously aren't relearning cards and stuff like that. So what are you prepping?
Yeah, I'll field this one first. First of all, today was scheduled release day. So today is the day that they released the World Series of Poker schedule. So
Ooh,
all
big
poker
day.
players right now is like going nuts on social media because they have some tournaments in the middle of July, some tournaments at the end of July that were just like, what the hell? These were normally in the beginning of June. So now we're looking at these going, ah. So one basic prep, just for scheduling. You figure out what tournaments you want to play because they have tournaments as low as I think $300 is the cheapest one, the Gladiators event, and most of the ones that Wayne and I play are usually like $1,500 buy-ins or $1,000 buy-ins, somewhere around there. And of course, they have them all the way up to 100K, and the most that I've ever played was a 10K buy-in. So you figure out what tournaments you want to play first, and then the prep going into them. There's two different ways you can prep. Either practice a lot of small tournaments like at your local casinos because it gives you scenarios where you're getting down to the nitty gritty, where you're getting down to the last like two or three tables and what it takes. Because what it takes when the tournament starts off to go from having 1,000 people to 500 people is something completely different than what it takes to go from 30 people to 20.
Oh, okay.
So
All
you
right.
have to
So,
prep
okay. Makes
the
sense.
different strategies. Yeah, because when there's so many more people, you're going to have a lot more ranges. People are going to be playing a lot dynamically different. But when you get down to like, if you started off with 1,000 people and you're down to 30, your people are playing much different than they did the day before or 2 days
And
ago.
their stacks are different. At least from what I've watched, their stacks are different. So
Hmm.
the commentators usually talk about how somebody's going to play different because they've got a bigger stack depending on their experience level
Oh
comes
yeah.
into play too. Like you would think that you're probably going to end up with 30 pros. But sometimes, and we've seen in the past from ESPN coverage, you've got guys that have just existed in the internet realm, and now they're playing some of their first tournaments live. So nobody knows them, and how they play. So
And a
it's
lot of things that people don't realize when it comes to poker, if you take 100 poker players and you line them up against the wall, only about five of those poker players are going to be profitable. The rest of them are all losing money. They're all losing players. They'll tell you something different, but that's the God's honest truth. Like,
it's part of poker, is being able to lie and being able to bluff, right?
right. But out of 100 poker players, 95 of them are losing money. They just don't realize it. Usually they're losing on a slow bleed. And if people are playing poker to have experiences, to have fun, things of that nature, to go home with a story, that's great. The five that are grinding for a living, I mean, trust me, we have plenty of stories too. But the ones that are doing it for a living are doing it a little bit differently than what most people like. During the series, people are like, "Oh my God, the Big O tournament's going on June 6th or June 5th, so I'm going to fly out there and make sure I go out there." Well, when we're there for like a month, or in this case, it might even be a month and a half now that we've looked at the schedule, we go into, we need to start scheduling days off. are just as important as days on, and then remembering to take those days off are just as important. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes you're in
Yeah.
that zone and you're like grinding and you're like, nah, man, I know it's supposed to be my day off, but I really feel like playing cards. Why? Because you just played 80 hours of cards. Like, what's another
Yeah.
6 hours going to do for you that you didn't do it the day before? But sometimes you're just in that mindset where, you get up, you're used to leaving at 11, you're used to coming back home at 2, 3 in the morning, and then you have a scheduled day off, and you look around the Airbnb where we usually have like 10, 15 guys at or whatever, and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's you and one other guy, and then you're like, maybe I should go play cards.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
there's a lot of mental prep that goes into it that a lot of people don't realize. And part of it is, like, one of the first things I tell people is that if you do go to Vegas during the series because you're trying to play poker, take it easy. Like, get there your first day and don't do anything. As crazy as that sounds, because people are, Vegas is the most hyped up. This is what Wayne would say to me. He goes, it's the most hyped up city where everybody and their third cousin is looking forward to going to Vegas. Hey, we're going to Vegas, man. We're going to crush it. Tell them to open up their bank accounts, blah, blah, blah. I can't wait till I can buy my boat that I wanted to buy, whatever.
Yeah.
And Vegas is also the number one place where people are like, I can't wait to get the F out of here because I've spent the last 12 hours thinking about playing a 30-cent slot machine because I'm so broke. Like,
Yeah.
or I mean, I've been in Vegas when you got a whole day left and you got no money to your name and you're just like, oh, this sucks. Like,
I would say I would relate that similarly to the movie how Hangover ruined probably Vegas and ruined bachelor parties for everyone, or at least guys,
Oh yeah.
because we have this mentality of what now a bachelor party needs to be like, or in Vegas's terms, what could happen in Vegas. Holy crap, that photo roll in the credits is going to be amazing. Maybe we'll meet Mike Tyson, all this kind of stuff. So and we've found this as students of the bachelor party. I've never been to Vegas, but as students of the bachelor party, we go to a bachelor party and you're so hyped up for months, for weeks and months for this bachelor party, and you go the first night and you're like, yo, the bar, the strip club, dances, this, that, and then you're like, and then the next day you're just like, fuck this shit, dude, I'm done. Like, and you're like, yo, whose idea was it to schedule 4 days? Like, what are we? Like, and
I've
so
only been the best man once, and
yeah.
I scheduled a whole weekend. And Wayne will tell you, I can party with the rest of them. And after
Yeah.
2 days, everybody was like, "Josh, you got to take it easy, man. We're all fucking tired." I mean, I took them fishing, we went partying, we did the whole 9 yards. But yeah,
Yeah.
after the second day, like, especially I remember on the fish boat coming back because I chartered a fish boat. They're all just like sitting in the back, sleeping in the sun. They're all passed out, and here I am still going, being like, "How the hell am I outlasting all you guys?" But
Yeah.
that might be
Yeah.
because of the poker background too, because that
Yeah,
allows
you
you
have
to stay up.
stamina, and you can you maybe have different cells, like a battery cell, and you just keep switching to different battery cells, and you can just repair them later or whatever. What do you say, Wayne? I mean, same sort of, what type of prep are you doing, or any additional type of prep for something as big as like the World Series of Poker?
Yeah, so Josh touched on a couple of the main ones. Another one is you definitely want to try to play longer sessions, right? So even if as I mentioned earlier, cash game you could pretty much sit down and leave after one hand, or I would say a normal session is probably like 4 to 6 hours. But if you're going to the series, you're going to try to play tournaments. Like, try to practice, get in the habit of playing longer sessions, right? Because here's how these like multi-day tournaments work. So let's say there's 3,000, like, so the largest PLO event typically of the year is there's a $600 pot limit Omaha tournament at the series. And the reason it's one of the largest is because I believe it's the lowest buy-in pot limit Omaha tournament that the series offers, right? So it usually gets, let's say, 3,000 people. So how it's going to work is 3,000 people are going to enter, and you're going to play for typically about 12 hours. After those 12 hours, it may be down to, I don't know, let's say like a couple hundred people. But within those 12 hours, every 2 hours, you typically get a 15-minute break,
Oh,
right?
that's
So
good.
15 minutes, it's not really that significant amount of a time to be able to eat. So you definitely want to prep. Like I usually bring a backpack and I'll have, like protein bars on me. I'll even bring like a shaker bottle, that's pre-mixed already. Because the problem is like if you try to go get food, it's like this giant ballroom where you have, I don't know, like 15, 20,000 people. And
Yeah.
they do try to schedule the tournament breaks to offset so that you don't have 20,000 people moving like a herd of cattle all at the
Yeah.
same time. But
Into
I mean,
a cafeteria. Yeah.
yeah, well, like they have like a little food court and stuff, but
Yeah.
the problem is you really can't get food. So you definitely want to prep food wise, like have stuff on you. I prepped for this like 4 or 5 years ago. So the first year I went to the series, really before that, I would eat a lot of larger meals. And after that, you kind of get into like a food coma where you just want to take a nap. So after the first year I went to the series, I was like, dude, you get 15 minutes every 2 hours. This is not working. So I literally trained myself where I eat now a lot of smaller meals so that I
Yeah.
don't get that, that kind of hungover, tired feeling afterwards. So you definitely want to prep that way. You want to play longer sessions. Prepare, get good sleep. Josh mentioned the rest days. The rest days are really important because the one thing that people who don't really play in casinos regularly know is when you go to Vegas, it's 120 degrees outside, typically, like, let's say like 105 to like 110,
Yeah.
something like that, every day outside, right? But then inside, they blast it sometimes to like 60 degrees, right? So sometimes physically, it can take a toll on you going from 120 to like 60 degrees. So it's good to take, supplements. It's good to make sure you're getting adequate amount of rest. It's good to take
Well, and then when you're inside that building, you're not getting the vitamin D of the sunlight. Plus, if you add I don't want to walk out onto the surface of the sun, so I don't
Mhm.
want to go outside. So you're in a
Yep.
you're in a room like I mean, I've gotten in a dust up with the band live because we made fun of their drummer at Hard Rock because he was wearing sunglasses inside of a casino and he was standing at center bar. So it's like, you look around and I remember those first times because that was like the first real casino. It's the only real casino I've ever been to. When you go and you've been there all night, it was partying for me. And then you walk outside and you're like, the fucking sun's up. I had no idea. I didn't
Yep.
even look out. I didn't even look at my watch. Holy
Yep.
crap. It's 7:30, wow. There's no way to tell inside of a casino, like what time it is. Like
Mhm.
you're in a spaceship. And so I'm sure you deal with that. And I bet, and I feel like with the onset of men's health, physical health in general has transitioned also into the poker world. I'm sure there was probably 15 years ago, a lot of guys, they'd play the tournament, then they'd go jump into another table game and drop a couple beers because they're like, yo, I'm off duty. I'm not in the tournament, but I'm playing something else, or I'm gonna go play a house game or a cash game somewhere, and they're drinking, and then it's like they've got to go pull another 12 hours at the tables in the tournament when you've got to be 100%. So
Mhm.
do you see that kind of thing, or did you see, Josh, I know you've been in that part of the game. Wayne, you weren't really old enough to drink and be in the casinos 15 years ago, probably, but
Mhm.
so like you guys see that kind of thing, like where
I
there is
will
that shift
say
now.
there is the old OG, the original grinders where like myself, I could party all night and then go play in a tournament the next morning. Matter of fact, most tournaments that I do well in, it's because I have shit sleep the day before. Like I'll
Okay.
I'll have like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. I'll be hungover. I'll smoke way too much weed, something to that effect, right? And but I will tell you nowadays there is way more the tournament grinder where they're like up at 9 in the morning, they're showered, they're ready to go, they're playing poker at 11, and then they come home, pack a meal, they're done at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, they bag and they have an actual routine, which is not something I'm used to seeing. Like back, like you said, you win a tournament, and even if you won a tournament and it was 20 grand, you'd be like, oh shit, now I'm going to go play some cash. Now
Yeah.
it's like, no, people will play tournaments, and when they're done playing the tournament, they'll go home and take a nap. And I know from my experience that it's really hard to play a tournament for 8 or 10 or 12 hours and then take the tournament hat off and put on the cash hat, because they are two completely different animals. They really are. Like, tournament pro poker players and cash pro poker players are two completely different types of people.
Yeah.
I'm more of a cash guy, but I've been diving into tournaments a lot more for the last probably 7 years. But there's still a part of me when, you're playing a cash game and it's going for 6 hours and the action's really good and they're about to start a tournament. You're like, yeah, I would never get up off this table because I can probably make more money and, another 3 to 4 hours here than the chances I'll make over on the tournament. Of course, the series coming up, it's a little bit different because every tournament's huge. Every first place is $250,000 plus.
I mean, it is a crazy thing, and it is something that I used to watch a lot of back when it was on ESPN and widely accessible, because that was stuff that ESPN used to air. Now they've just got idiots on a panel like this just yammering on about the same crap all day long. I leave it on. Like, I'll be sitting in here in my office and like the living room is earshot away, and I'll just like leave the TV on, and I get tired of, once Good Morning America's over, I switch it over to ESPN because I don't want to hear anything that comes on after it. And it's just the same crap over and over and over again. And it's like, God, man, like these people just and it's the same people and they just get paid to continue talking about just coming at it from different angles and stuff like that. And it's crazy until I can switch it on to Pat McAfee and watch their craziness, or at least listen to their craziness in the background.
And when it comes to poker, one of the things, I was having a conversation with somebody about this recently, that, if you look at poker 10, 15 years ago, you had a pretty standard base of villains and people that you would root for, right? You had the Mike the Mouth Matisow, you had Daniel Negreanu,
Phil
and of course Phil Hellmuth, right? And even though you still have some of those guys like Daniel Negreanu and Mike the Mouth and Phil, but you don't have any like Sammy Farha villains with the cigarette sitting out of their mouth, or like Sammy what Farha, people like the classic, oh, this is what a poker player looks like. I mean, obviously my get-up's a little bit more out there. I do that so that way people recognize me a little bit more, but you don't have that as often as you did 10 to 15 years ago. So I don't think like ESPN has as much incentive, because there's like, oh, there's not much story behind this guy. Like, they'll be like, oh, this guy's from Austria. He came to the United States. That's it. Oh, there's 20 of his Austrian friends who all came to the United States for the WSOP. That's it. There's no like background story or anything. I don't know. I think
that's
10
an
years
interesting
ago,
point.
there was more of that villainism there.
Yeah, there's less for them, the reporting side of things, telling it's harder for them to work through and find a feel good story, or there's a story behind some of them.
Sure.
But I mean, you get they play, you get your stars, you get your people that I'm saying like the Jennifer Tillys, like the people that have been in TV or movies, and then now they're poker players. So they latch onto those people and stuff. But I'm sure there's only so much of that you can pump in. And they probably just did like I've said before, a cost benefit where they just look at it and go, yeah, this is just, the World Series wants too much money from us to get the TV rights, and we're not seeing enough of a return, or it's just too difficult on us. Or we can fill it with our silly talking head people. We can fill the day with those people.
And when the WSOP went to a paywall with Poker Go, like that, I don't even have a Poker Go subscription, because it's like, I remember being able to watch it on ESPN, and I just refused to pay for a poker subscription to get, the latest update, instead of them just showing it for free on YouTube. Like, that's kind of my thought process is, God bless you, Poker Go. You should just show the damn stuff live on YouTube or with a 30-minute delay. Don't make people pay for it. Like, I don't know. It just pisses me off. I'm not going to pay you $10 a month or $20 a month to figure out who won the WSOP bracelet event, the minute it happens. If I got to wait 10 minutes, guess what? I'll wait 10 minutes.
You can go to X and you can find it on X.
Yeah.
Anything that's breaking news, I just go to X and I search it and I read 5 different tweets or whatever they call them now, and then and I'm like, okay, I found the truth. That's it. That's enough for me. It's there. It's in real time, and we've got it for the most part.
Yeah, I think if PokerGo did some more stories with poker players and give more background notice, our background stories, you're right. It's hard to find a feel good story. I think that would help out the industry quite a bit, but I just don't think they have the creativity. I don't know, gene or creativity. There's no one there that's in production who's like, oh, let's be creative and have this guy, it's like,
yeah, I mean, that's, you got to think, like, I would only think from, a producer's mind frame. You've got to almost have regional scouts that are at these smaller tournaments going ahead of time, or listening to guys like yourself that are, saying, hey, we're going to go practice here, learn here. It's just the question of that. Cause then you've got to do research. You've got to fill in and then now follow this guy around and document video of him or her working their way up, through practice. And then it's like, now they're sitting at the table. And then the other thing is that's slightly a gamble for them, because this guy busts out the first day and you're like, fuck, we've got 40 hours of footage on this asshole. And he busted out and he says, I'm done with Vegas for the week or the month. I'm not playing in any other tournaments and I'm out. And it's like, yo, like, we just blew our load on this guy. So that may have been something that happened where they had so much data on so many people that just hit a bad run and bounced out and just said, hey guys, I've got another opportunity in fucking Oklahoma. So I'm gonna leave Vegas. I'm gonna fly out to Oklahoma.
Oh, and Wayne and I have seen it during the series where somebody comes, they're expecting to stay for 2 weeks, and after like 4 days, they're like, hey, I'm out. Everything went wrong. Nothing went right. I was going to be here for another week and now I'm done. It's like, all right, I get it. Like, that is the nature of poker. You do have those unexpected circumstances pop up. So yeah, I could see a network getting burned on that time and time again and just going, what, screw it. Just cut the whole thing.
Yeah. Cause with sports, like, that there's a season that they've got that they can deal with. You can have, like, they may run a gamble and they may go do Hard Knocks with HBO for a shitty football team, but you've got some stuff in the locker room that they can use, and they put out Hard Knocks on HBO or whatever for an NFL team. But you've got a season of forced, these games are going to happen, whereas if you ride a pony, i.e. a player, into a tournament and then that pony trips, like, you've lost it. So, and then otherwise it's a lot of groundwork there at the tournament to find your ponies, to find your player there. That's like, oh man, this guy's making some waves. You guys, the story you told me about, you walking through, I think, the Venetian in your outfits, giving out poker chips. They'd have to have their scouts there, their producers out there on the floor going, these 2 characters look like some guys that we want to, like, feature and follow them through the tables.
That was also the first time we ever mentioned that story in public, ever, was when we mentioned it to you. When we said,
well, we should do it. We should do it again. I'll make a little reel about it.
Walked around and handed out $25 chips. Yeah, it cost us like it was like $600 to $1,000. It was
let me run a quick. I'll run an ad just to give a break there. But if you don't mind, let's rehash that story, because it might make for a good reel on my end and give you guys some good pub. So I'll run a quick ad and then we'll come back, and then we can work into something else. Hey, come here. No, bring it in real close. I got something for you. Did you subscribe yet? Right down there. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification, because you got to know when we're going to give you a show. Do it. Go now. I'm waiting. Come on. Right there. All right, back to the show. Yo, what's up, everybody? I want to let you know I have a new website format. Same website, donutshoppodcast.com, but this time I'm running it through Shopify. Make it much easier to purchase items because aside from the hats that I have up there, Donut Shop Podcast, PVC hats, the blue line snapback, laser mesh, nice and clean on the inside, comfy hats. I have some other swag, t-shirts, can koozies, just some other stuff that I put up there. I'm running the website through Shopify, and so it'll make it real easy for you guys to go on and purchase some stuff and support the show. So thanks for tuning in and following the show, and don't forget donutshoppodcast.com. Thanks. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show in their introduction, I met these guys in Miami at the 5K. I'm gonna send myself the picture. You guys were quick on it on your show, but so I met these guys and they were in their Dumb and Dumber outfits and told me a story on their show. And then, you said kind of like the genesis of it. So tell me the genesis of it. And so there I am, my buddy Joe, and there they are. You may recognize them as two dudes sitting right here on the podcast. So that's the picture of them and their Dumb and Dumber. And they did a 5K in that with very nice dress shoes, all that kind of stuff.
I'm still working on my feet to fix my feet. Just from all the blisters that I've had, I still have blisters down there. Oh yeah.
Whoops. Oh, there we go. I rearranged you guys now because I kicked Wayne off by accident tapping through. So tell me, so if you don't mind, rehash this story because it was an interesting story of when you guys first kind of created.
So yeah, when we first did the Venetian live stream, Wayne and I we ordered our tuxes. Now, first of all, we had to go to a couple different places, or I had to go to a couple different places to get an orange tux. Finally, we went to Bespoke in Vegas to get us a custom-made tuxedo. So we had to do all this way ahead of time before the live stream, and no one knew what we were doing. And we had to order orange top hats and blue top hats and cummerbums and bow ties and shoes and everything. So we finally get everything ordered. We get the custom tuxes ordered. And while we're in the hotel room, I said, Wayne, you know what they did in their tuxedos? I said, just in the movie. Everybody that they talked to, they were just like handing out $100 bills. And Wayne's like, yeah. He goes, so do you think we should do that? And I said, yeah, we can't do hundreds though. That's just too crazy. I said, we're not balling like that. I said, but you know what? We could probably do. And Wayne goes, what do you think? Like $5 chips, $10 chips? And I said, no, we should do $25 chips for the first one. Oh, and yeah, so Wayne goes, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm like, it's going to hurt us. I said, but it's part of our, I don't know, ethical philosophy of paying it forward or helping your fellow man or whatever the case may be. But I remember we go down to the cashier and I get $1,000 in green, which, is only 40 green chips. And Wayne gets $1,000 in green. And the first person we tipped, we slide the cashier out $25 and handed it to her. But it absolutely made me feel great because as we were tipping all the dealers, including the janitor, like even the janitor walked by and he was like, sirs? And I was like, oh, here you go. And we each handed him one. But it was such a cool feeling because as you walked by, like the dealers that were dealing just random tables, we'd walk up to them and toss them a green and go, here, this is for you. And it was a green from him and a green from me. So it was each dealer got $50. Yeah. And we tipped the whole damn room and the energy in the room was just, it was amazing. I loved it. I don't know. Even though it cost us a lot of money, because it did, I felt great about it. And because that amount of money was nothing compared to like just remembering that experience, because it was like everybody was just so happy to see you. Of course, you're handing them free money, but it was like even the tables that the players knew something was going on. They're like, why is there this buzz with these damn guys in these damn tuxedos? And yeah, so it was cool to be like tossing them chips.
So Wayne, did you guys sit down and actually play in the tuxedos then? Like in the like kind of in character or?
Yeah. So So the opening of the Venetian live. So Venetian had a poker room. It used to be literally like right when you walked off the strip. And then they had a new poker room, and then along with that, they made a streaming studio. Right. So if some of your viewers watch poker streams, the most popular stream is Hustler Casino Live out of LA. But there's a couple others. There's one in Texas, The Lodge, and a couple others. But so Venetian said, "Hey, I want to get into the live stream game." So they basically had this live stream studio, and we were going to be the first non hold'em game. So we were playing PLO. I think it was actually a PLO mix. So yeah, we passed out this money, and this was maybe like 30 minutes before our stream was starting, and then they have I believe an hour delay. But yeah, we were playing in our tuxes and just trying to kind of hype up the crowd and create a little buzz, as Josh said. And we looked at it as essentially a marketing expense or a business expense, whether it's a
Right.
podcast or any other business. Like we said, okay, the suits, the money that we're passing out, like it's a business expense. We're hoping that, okay, we're paying it forward and we're going to get the views and different opportunities on the back end from it. So it was a really, really cool experience. Everyone, we were kind of worried. I think I mentioned this on our podcast, but we were worried, right? Because I had mentioned to Josh, like, dude, this movie came out in 94. This was 2025. So like, there's people that are like, if there's people in like their early 20s, like they literally were not even born when this movie came out. I was like, what if there's a lot of people that are not going to recognize that or, know the reference, right? And I think, so Venetian, they did a really good job of, besides, paying us, they also gave us a suite. So we were up at like the 37th floor. We're coming down and there's like a group of like 22, 23-year-old women, and like they all immediately were like, oh my God, Dumb and Dumber, like that's amazing. And then that just kind of reaffirmed my head, like, okay, this is a reference that even for people who were not born when the movie came out, they just know it. So it was
Yeah, I mean,
really,
there was a
really cool
sequel. There was
experience.
the sequel, Dumb and Dumberer, that came
Mm-hmm,
out, and then with social media and memes and stuff like that, some of that stuff just kind of keeps it
mm-hmm,
alive and keeps it rolling. So I think it's and with some of the ridiculousness that they did in that movie, it's timeless.
mm-hmm,
Where it applies to today. You can just be that dumb today. There's nothing that's like a social joke that doesn't hit in that movie, I
mm-hmm.
don't think.
No.
So nothing makes that movie's not cancelable. Like, so it's I don't think it's going anywhere. So it works to how you guys are playing it. So what is a live stream, like what is a live stream room, poker room? Are they trying to basically create their own web version of ESPN's coverage of World Series of Poker without the exposés on certain players and stuff like that?
Yeah, sort of like they show everybody's cards at the same time. That's why there's like a 30 to 45-minute delay. So you can
Right.
play along with the player. Like you'll see that, one player has the nut flush where the other player has like the second nuts. And so when one guy bets, $3,000, you already know who's going to end up winning the hand, but you get to kind of play along with them. That's why there's a
Oh,
delay on
because I know I've seen like some of them. I think World Poker Tour, when they added
it.
like table cameras, so
Hmm.
like the players like have to slide their two, like when I'm watching Hold'em, they got to slide their two corners to at least show the camera
To the
like
camera,
what
yeah. Now
show
they
them what they're
have
working with.
now they have radio RFID, radio frequency
Shut up.
identification devices inside the cards. So when you have the
Oh my
cards
God.
all dealt out, you don't even have to pick them up to show to the camera. You place them in the box and make sure that they're, in the box, and then you can look at your hand and just go from there.
Wow. Wow. Is there, I mean, you guys have probably talked about it a million times. Is there any question on cheating with that
Oh,
sort of a thing?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's actually been a few famous stories. The most notable one is the Chauncey Billups one that, $7
Oh
million.
yeah.
Yeah, they're saying $7 million that was cheated. That was the amount that they can prove, but it's probably over $100 million that they were using an X-ray or an RFID X-ray TV or a poker table where it could just read the cards on it. But even
So
like
with
Mike
that one,
Possel's a super famous one as well that allegedly he cheated. You have to say that because he sues everybody But yeah,
Oh,
because he
please.
allegedly he had an RFID device in his lap that he could see the RFID coming up from the reader and hacked into it. Yeah, and
So, like going back to the Chauncey Billups one, is
sure.
that where I'm not 100% familiar with it, but was that like house game stuff or was that
Yeah,
at an actual
yeah,
casino?
no.
So that
So
was
like
house game stuff.
so the Chauncey Billups stuff, and we interviewed a guy who was at the Chauncey Billups game. So they would invite a bunch of different, pro NBA players, a bunch of affluent
Yeah.
people, and they would have super high stakes. And the card shufflers, this is something that like we don't talk a lot about in our industry, but this is, I guess, known if you really deep dive into it. The poker card shufflers, the Deckmaster 2s, can actually put it in order whatever it wants to and determine the winner and tell you ahead of time if you hack it appropriately enough. This is something that like we don't talk about because it happens so infrequently. But when there's certain things that pop up where it's like these guys are going crazy with their hands, they're going all in. Like we interviewed a guy that had flopped a straight flush and ended up losing. Well, like Wayne and I can probably tell you that's maybe never happened to us. Like, and we've been playing, 40, 60, 80 hours a week. And I mean, you get the point. Like,
Yeah.
it can happen, but it's just so improbable. It's unlikely. And for it to happen to like 3 or 4 different people who went to the home game, it's like, come on now. But yeah, so those card shuffling machines, if you hack them, can tell you the outcome of the hand because they put all the cards in order. So even if you have like a hand shuffler, like a dealer who hand shuffles, if they are a card mechanic, they can do that. So the challenge that you run into when you go to home games as a poker player, and this is like industry standard, is the game legit? Is the game going to pay off? Like if I win $5, $6, $8,000, am I going to have a problem getting paid on it?
Yeah.
Is it safe? Am I going to get robbed here?
Right.
Is somebody going to follow me home? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. And then, it boils down to like, is it worth it? Like, is the risk versus reward worth it? Like some home games I'll go to if they're smaller. I've been to some big home games, and the big home games just don't seem to be worth it. Like the private games that might be where there's 40, 50, $60,000 on the table. For the most part, those are just not worth it. I know for especially a former cop, they're just like no one should ever have that much money on them.
Right. Yeah. You just exactly like you said. And I told you guys a story on yours about how we thought we were sitting out back of a house in a small neighborhood and we thought we were going to get ripped. But it probably would have been the worst idea to rip a poker table full of cops that
Right.
two-thirds were packing guns, but that somebody would have gotten shot.
Well,
like
and
if somebody's coming with a real gun.
Oh, sure. Well, and trust me, like even being a pro poker player, traveling with $10,000-$20,000 commonly, like that's real. Like if I go on a poker trip, that's pretty common that I'll have that at some point on me. But it's one of those things where if I get pulled over by a cop, and a cop's like, why would anybody have this much money on them? Until I pull out, like I did get pulled out one time in Kansas and the cop recognized me. He goes, "Oh my God, you're the professor." And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, I showed him my videos and stuff and he was super excited and like couldn't believe I was going through Kansas out of all the places. I was on my way to the series, but at the time, and I didn't tell him this, but I had like $74,000 in my car. And it's just like any cop who sees that's going to be like, whoa, this, we're gonna confiscate this, or what the hell are you doing with it? Well, yeah, it's but anywhere. I mean, 70 grand's a lot of 20 grand's a lot of money, So it when we say we get a little numb to it, it's one of those things where like I went to a home game last night and I had like $4,000 on me, and most people are buying it for 500, but I was still like, oh my God, this is the least amount of money I've gone to a home game in a long time, because I always want to have enough money to where if the game just gets ridiculous, I can cover it. Like if the game is so good where it's like, yeah, honey, I'm not coming home until I call you. Like that could be 24 hours from now. I want to have enough to cover that. If that happens, it doesn't happen very often, but if it happens the one time a year and I am short on my money, I'm going to be pissed. you know. But
Yeah.
most people who aren't in the poker world, they just, like, my mom said to me one time, she goes, "Oh, if I lost like $2,000, I'd just lose my shit." And I'm like, Mom, I'm like, you could lose like $20,000. It's not going to have an impact on your life, you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
for poker players, it's a little bit of a different, it's a different norm. You know, like me carrying around lots of money is because that's my artillery. That's what I use to go to work. When
Yeah.
you're sitting at a poker table and you look down at your chips and you see you've got $2,000 and you think rent is 1,200 and this is this, and you start looking at it, you've already lost. Just get up.
Yeah.
Just from
Yeah.
one person's advice right now, because I tell people all the time, and I say it as a joke. I'll say, you know, that's not really money. Those are just chips. It doesn't turn into money until you get up there. Now, I say that as a joke really commonly with anybody who plays with me, but there's a truth to that. If you look at those poker chips on the poker table as money, you've already lost. I think, right?
Yeah.
Right, Wayne? Wouldn't you agree? You just have to look at them and be like, these are my weapons of arsenal. These are my tools.
Yeah, I tell students all the time, and it's advice to myself as well, that anytime you're thinking about your stack and, you know, thinking about like, oh, I don't want to lose this money because maybe it's too big, right? Like maybe, like I know when I was starting out vlogging 4 or 5 years ago, like I had a limited bankroll. So I would literally show up to the casino with two $200 buy-ins. So 400 total. And sometimes I buy in for $200 and I run it up to like 12, $1,500. And that represented a very large percentage of my bankroll. So at that point, if I can't really afford to lose what's in front of me, then I have to leave. Right. So
Yeah.
that's a good point. But people don't do that. There's always the famous, oh, I'm just gonna play one more hand or like last hand, right? Like every poker player that's played for any decent amount of time, they have a last hand story where they're, you know, because usually the dealers are trained that if even if you're like you're putting on your jacket, you're like you're about to get out of there, the dealers still advise like, hey, give them cards, even though like they're clearly walking away. So like everyone has a story where they've played that final hand and like they have some bad beat story. Oh, I had pocket aces and the guy had whatever and sucked out. So like if you know, right at that point, once you know that the money in front of you is more than you're willing to lose, you have to get up.
And you have to get up and you have to, so like, what's the actual break off? Cause like you said, like a dealer might deal you in, like, do you need to pull your chips or something like that? Or like, what's
Yeah,
the
you rack them
tactic?
up in a rack and you just say seat open and you just walk away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
if you're in a cash game, yeah.
unless you've kind of declared that, they may throw
Mm-hmm.
you in and then just they pulled me back in, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
here I am. And then you create that story, like you said. God, you know, I mean, and I do that because I'll do the slots like when we go to a concert or whatever at the casino,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly what the casino wants you to do. You know, and I'll put $100 in and I'll go up to like 190, and I'm like, sweet, I should we'll play it down to one, and you just keep making benchmarks or fucking
Mm-hmm.
basement marks, and you just keep going lower and lower, and then all of a sudden you're at $75, and then you just go, fuck, I'll just play this through. All right, I'm out. Cash out 67 cents. And you're like, damn it, I was at like 190. You know, I could have had two
It's
rounds of
even
drinks.
worse. It's even worse when you're online. Like 2 nights ago, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to
Oh,
bed in about 20 minutes, and then next thing you know, I lose a $9,000 pot, just
oh,
huge fucking pot, right? I don't even like react. Like I don't like most people. It'll be like screaming at the screen. I was just like, God damn it! I'm like, I just lost a $9,000 pot. I remember
right.
I looked at my phone and I went, oh, I guess I'm not going to bed in 20 minutes now.
Yeah.
I went to
You
bed like
gotta,
an hour and a half later, but I was only stuck 900 at the time, and I was like, okay, now I can go to sleep. I'm like, but
yeah,
going to sleep being
this
stuck
feels
four
better.
thousand dollars was not my initial plan. But I was like, okay, down 900, I can get some sleep. So yeah,
So
you have those.
mentally, would you say that like online is a little different than
Oh
playing in
yeah,
person because
mental like
you're not physically looking at something,
oh
you're looking
yeah.
at digit on the screen?
So I don't know. Online feels, I don't want to say makes you more numb to it, but I'll give you like this past week, I was sitting next to my wife. We're watching Bridgerton or whatever the hell show is on Netflix that we're watching. You know, that I'll
Yeah.
watch and play poker at the same time. And I remember I had like a $2,000 or $3,000 pot that I was involved in, and I didn't even like react. I was just like, okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
it makes you numb. Where if you're live and you lose a $3,000 pot, you get to see all those chippers and all the chips go into your opponent. You're like, yeah, that really burns.
Yeah.
I don't know. Losing a $5,000 pot live feels way worse than losing a $5,000 pot online, and it happens a lot slower. Like when you lose a $5,000 pot, then the dealer's got to grab all the chips and then push them over
Yeah.
to the player, and oh, here's a couple more chips I forgot, sir. And they're pushing them across the table. Feels way worse because online it's like, oh, I lost a $5,000 pot. Oh, the next hand's already being dealt.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and Wayne, you've been doing the online stuff like since you were a kid. So
Mhm.
like, what's your mentality like seeing that stuff, even since all the way back to when you were 14?
Yeah, it takes some time to realize that, hey, this number on a screen actually does represent money, even though it takes a
Mhm.
little bit of time. Like I think back in the day, it would sometimes take like 3 to 5 business days to, actually cash it out into your account or whatever. So yeah, you have to train yourself because there are so many players that play live with us. Like, we'll play live, we'll go on like a meetup game trip. Like we've been in LA, we've been in Texas, been in Chicago. So a lot of times we'll play live with somebody and they'll say, oh, I heard you guys play online together. I say, yeah. And they'll come online and they're really good players, but they'll just dust off or punt off money online because they don't take it seriously. Because as Josh said, when you're live, you have the stack of chips in front of you. Like you're actually seeing the real life people, you're seeing the deal, you're feeling the cards. Whereas everything now is just on your phone where you don't even realize like, okay, this is real money. So you have to, and it goes a lot quicker, right? Like Josh said, if you lose a 5K pot, the dealer's got to push all the chips. You got to pull cash out unless you already have chips. Online, it's like, okay, cool. I just lost 5K. Rebuy. Boom. I'm already
Yeah.
back in the action. Like the hand's already dealt. You almost don't even get to process like what the hell just happened.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it seems like just like online sportsbook stuff. It seems like you could really lose control if
Hmm.
you don't know if you're not disciplined towards
Yep.
what you're doing, being online. Because I just know when I've played like the downloadable video games that you're playing with nothing, you're not actually logged into a server, and it's just like, oh yeah, guys, start with 5,000. Fucking play. Well, that was fun 6 minutes, and like you're like out, because
Yep.
you basically just kept tapping,
Hmm.
and you threw it. But you could do that with what is real money attached to a bank account if you aren't focused or disciplined enough.
Oh
So
yeah, one of the first
lucky me.
questions I remember I had a student and he goes, "Oh, I'm really good online. I'm really good live. I won money live." And he goes, "I keep losing online." He goes, "So I need you to help me with that." And I said, "All right." I said, "Well, what's the couple first things that you're doing when you're playing online?" "Well, I'm getting the kid into bed, listening to the wife, whatever her rest of her day was, and this that." And I said, when you're at the poker table at the casino, are you listening to your wife's bullshit? I said, are you putting the kid to bed? He goes, no. I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm playing poker. I said, why in the hell would you do that then at home? I'm like, yeah, it's online and it's convenient on your phone, but you need to treat it just like you're at the casino. If you got to go put yourself in a little cubicle and be like, oh, I'm going to play poker on my phone or play poker on my computer, treat it like you're at the casino because it is real money. And immediately he started having winning sessions. He was like, yeah, he
Right.
goes, just that little tidbit of information. And I think that's an experience thing. Cause I think when most people are playing, they're, easily distracted and they're not focused. And it's like, oh damn, I just lost a $500 pot. It's like, that is real money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's real money, and it has the ability to fall away even faster when you're half out. When you got one foot in, one foot out. Like you're not sitting at the poker table at the
Oh
casino
yeah.
scrolling through Facebook on your phone and stuff like that.
Well,
Switching between apps or reading text messages.
Well, that's why when I am playing live, if somebody gets a phone call and then they start talking on the phone, if the dealer or somebody else is like, "Hey, don't talk on the phone while you're playing," I say, "Shut the hell up. Let them get as much distracted
Yeah.
as they can, especially in
They're a
this
big
big
boy.
pot I'm involved with them." I'm betting
Yeah.
$600. Let his wife distract him. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Make the
Like,
wrong decision, whatever it is.
yeah, remember when you folded a second ago? You're like, shut the fuck up. Like you're not in this game.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you don't have anything. So all right, boys. Well, dude, this has been really entertaining, I think. But I think this is probably a good spot to, I mean, I got plenty more to ask, but might as well wrap it up and leave everybody wanting more. So just a reminder, you can find these guys on Suck It Up Man podcast on YouTube, plus their own. Tell your own, and then I'll also link it below if they want to watch your vlogs.
Yeah, mine is PLO Professor on YouTube as well as Facebook and X and IG.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
And then mine is Donk Fish Poker. So like a donk fish poker all together. And yeah, we can give you some lessons. Josh and I both do coaching. So if you wanted to be a degenerate like we've been talking about, we'll be happy to help you out with that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't see why even like say cops or first responders, whoever is listening in the show that plays house games, why they couldn't get some coaching and he set you up for your next house game and do that. I had a thought, but I don't remember it, and I even put my note page up and I was like, I'm going to type it. And I go, no, I'll remember, but I didn't remember, but maybe I'll remember and I'll ask you guys anyways. But it was good. It was during the house game, cheating scandals, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was interesting stuff. So thank you very much, guys. And, we'll be in touch, of course, and then just stick around and we'll make sure everything gets uploaded. So, I'll catch everybody else on the next Donut Shop.
Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.